Sometimes I do that at the very beginning of Zazen. Sometimes I remember once I've already been practicing sitting for a while. But it starts either by holding the breath, which is to say, just not breathing in for a decent amount of time until you stimulate the gasp reflex, the mahā reflex. So it puts you in touch with a very deep part of the brain. The gasp reflex is in a baby. It's like when the midwife smacks the baby's bottom, it would go. It would a forceful big in-breath. And if we hold our breath long enough, that is still kind of stimulated at some very deep level. It's related with the CO2 reflex. As you go on not breathing in, the carbon dioxide builds up in the blood. So sometimes I start with that, but thinking developmentally that the first movement that the embryo makes in the womb, we call it in developmental work, or we used to call it in developmental work when I used to do that with at the Alexander School and with children with developmental problems. The very powerful developmental movement, we call it embryonic rock, and so it would be curling up somewhat and very, very slowly rocking back and forward. It's a powerful movement. It recapitulates a very early kind of movement the embryo would make in the womb, just a gentle rocking forward and backward. So if you want to start with that, then of course a deep bow at the beginning of Zazen somewhat recapitulates that movement. And then there's the and that movement is also manifested when the baby's born, when its head extends and the whole body extends as part of the baby coming out of the birth canal. So that the tonic labyrinthine reflex in flexion or in extension. So my Alexander head of training, Ray Evans, used to say that Alexander had rediscovered. He noticed in people's misuse the pattern which Ray called mahā-TLR. So those two, mahā and TLR, they're both deeply implicated with the vestibular system. So it's not a bad place to start thinking, what does it mean to think up? It's related with our faulty conception of where up is related with the vestibular system. And then another vestibular reflex is the asymmetrical tonic neck reflex, and that going from side to side stimulates that. The vestibular system is sensing you're tilting to the left or tilting to the right, and so that's related with a primitive reflex, the asymmetric tonic neck reflex, whereby the head tilts or turns to the left. In this case, the arm would stretch out on that side. The ATNR, the asymmetric tonic neck reflex. So again, that slow movement going from side to side is a powerful movement. And then what I'm coming to, the reason I'm doing this little preamble, is because the fourth, to be honest, the third and the fourth reflex, the ATNR and the STNR, relate with Alexander directions in a way that it was not so much Ray as me and Ron Collier on Ron Collier's training course over the years. We're discussing the links between Alexander directions and the reflexes. So the third reflex is to let the back lengthen and widen, let the neck be free, to let the head go forward and up is mahā-TLR. And to let the back lengthen and widen is related with the ATNR because it's a twisting reflex. And when there's tightness, when there's a lack of, when release needs to happen of when the whole back needs to widen, the constriction is usually, invariably it's a twist, especially of the double spiral musculature. So there's imbalance between the two sides of the double helix, that creates a shortening and a narrowing. And so let the back lengthen and widen is an untwisting kind of release. Let the neck be free to let the head go forward and up, to let the back lengthen and widen. And then knees forwards and away is very much related with what the baby does around 6 months or so. It comes up from lying on its tummy into the cat sit position. So if its head extends, its arms extend, its hips and knees flex, and that brings it back into the cat sit position. It's resting on its arms. So that reflex, if the neck is extended as it is in Zazen, unless you're bowing or looking down, see the neck's extended and that reflex is immature, it'll create a kind of tension at the hips. It'll like pull the legs into the pelvis. So the antidote to that, in Alexander terms, developmentally, the antidote to that would be get the baby crawling on hands and knees to free up the hips. But in Alexander, in terms of directions or terms of sitting in Zazen, what unlocks that whole thing and really unlocks everything leading up to that, in a sense, is knees forwards and away. And that's what when I say that direction, knees forwards and away, it's like with these poems that we're going to discuss, or these 8 thoughts of a great person. To really understand everything that's behind them, they're just knees forward and away. It's just 4 words, isn't it? But the more Alexander work you've done, and the more you've worked with the reflexes, there's a whole hinterland of understanding that gradually grows that are associated with it. So, in emphasising knees forwards and away, I'm coming. It means a lot to me, and I'm kind of inviting people to make their own investigation or discovery. It's like I had lessons with Marjorie Barlow when she was in her 80s, having had her first lesson with FM Alexander when she was 16. So she'd spent her whole life thinking directions primarily, and then thinking about what they mean, thinking about what they mean, and actually thinking knees forwards and away is thinking, but not as people understand thinking. Not thinking about sending the knees forwards and away, thinking the knees forwards and away. So, at the end of her life, Marjorie would have me lying down on her teaching table with my knees bent, and she'd be saying, "Let the neck be free," or sometimes she'd say the stronger stimulus, "Free, now free your neck, free your neck." So let the head go forward and up, which meant forward and up. So if I was lying down, up would be that way, away from the knees, if you like, along the lengthening along the table. Let the neck be free to let the head go forward and up, to let the back lengthen and widen. Sending the knees, she would say, sending the knees up to the ceiling. Because if you're lying on your back, up to the ceiling is the same direction for the legs to release out of the pelvis. So if you're sitting in Zazen, knees forwards and away. Away means away from the hips and away from each other if you're sitting in Zazen, because the legs are going in that direction. Recently I googled correct Zen posture, thinking I'd find a bad example of it. I was going to use that to illustrate a point. And in fact, one of the things I found was if you Google correct Zazen posture, or correct sitting posture, Zen, whatever, there's a photo of somebody with from the centre, there's an arrow pointing upwards and 2 arrows pointing forwards for the knees, and then 2 shorter arrows pointing down from the centre to the sitting bones, which is not a bad approximation of the truth, except what you tend to notice in Alexander the World is that the real people who know the school, the old teachers, they don't use arrows. And I've used arrows in the past. The thing is with it, it's like in Chinese Zen, Jupo, the 10 directions, means all directions. And these forward and away is not 2 directions. It can't be represented by 2 arrows. Because really, all the directions are about growth. So how many arrows would you need to point, to draw, to point the oak tree growing out? It's growing in all directions, isn't it? Its roots are going down and out, mainly to the side. The trunk is going mainly up the middle, but then the whole thing year by year is it's widening. The trunk is widening, expanding. That's the kind of growth we're after. Bhavana, in cultivating bhavana. Bhavanam bhavehi. Cultivating. This is turning into a much longer preamble than I intended, but I am going to talk about knees forward and away. So this. If we pretend I haven't blathered for 12 minutes already with this preamble, how I would start in the morning is, again, I'm going to do those 4 movements, and then there'll be a number of minutes, or maybe half an hour or more. Recently, to be honest, it's not really traditional Zazen, but I find myself more and more, it's like that something wants to recite these words, which are a combination of what's evolved, words that I found useful, and then the verses in Shikarini meter fitting into those. So the title of this talk is going to be 8 thoughts, 9 verses, and 1 direction. Okay, so the 1 direction is knees forwards and away. But I've talked about the hinterland of it developmentally, like the hinterland of it, but where it's going to, knees forward and away, it's going towards prapañśopashamam, the melting away of othering, the ending of objectification, the melting away. Recently, I like to use the word melting away, the melting away of othering. That's the direction we're going in. So here we go, 8 thoughts, 9 verses in 1 direction. Now let's see what happens in a friendly way. just sending the knees forwards and away. Knees forwards and away, like asking one's best friend, not much, alpecchu. Krameṇādbhiḥ śuddhaṁ, kanakam pāṁsu-vyavahitaṁ, yathāgnau karmāraḥ, pacati brisham avartayati ca, tata yoga charo, nippapañca dosha-vyavahitaṁ, vishodhya kleshebhya, shamayati mana samkshipati ca. Knees forwards and away. A sense of being content, to stay back in one's own back, letting a separation happen. Kvachid bhuktva yatad vasanam api yatad parihito, vasanatma rama kvachana vijaneyo biramati, kritartha sajneya, shamasukha rasajna kritamati, paresham samsargam pariharati ya kantakamiva, yadi dvandvarame jagati vishaya vyagrahridaye, vivikte nirdvandvo viharati kirti shantahridaya, tato pitva prajñā rasamamritavad santuṭṭha hridayo, vivikta samsaktam vishaya kripanam shochati jagat, vasan shunyagare yadi satatame ko biramate, yadi klesh otpadai sahana ramate shatrubiriva, charanatma ramo yadi chapibati priti shalilam, tato bhunkte shreshtam tridashapati rajadupi apisukam, tato bhunkte shreshtam tridashapati rajadapisukam. Knees forwards and away, viriya, alpecchu, samtuṣṭi, praviveka, vīrya. Knees forwards and away, nothing more than a wish, but a persistent one, vīrya, that won't take no for an answer. Knees forwards and away, vīrya. Nothing more than a wish, but a persistent one that won't take no for an answer. alabdasya labo niyatamupalabdasya vigama tataivatma vajna kripanam adikebhya paribhava tamo nistejastvam śruti niyamatuṣṭi vyuparamo nrinam nirviryanam bhavati vinipatascha bhavati nayam śrutvā shakto yadayam abhivridim nalabhati param dharmam jnatva yad upashant yadayam upashantim nalabhati griham tyaktva muktau yadayam upashantim nalabhati nimitam kausidyam bhavati puruṣasya naripu. Okay, so I messed up the second line of that verse. I'll do it again. Nayam śrutvā shakto yadayam abhivridim nalabhati param dharmam jnatva yaduparinivasam nalabhati griham tyaktva muktau yadayam upashantim nalabhati nimitam kausidyam bhavati puruṣasya naripu anikshipt otsaho yadikanati gam varilabhati prasaktam vyamatnan jvalanamaranibhyam janayati prayukta yoge tu druvamupalabhante shramapalam drutam nityam yantyo girimapi bindanti sarita krishtva gam paripalyacha shramashatairashno tishashya shriyam yatnena praviveka sa garajalam ratna shriya kridati shatrunam avaduya viryamishu birbhungte narendra shriyam tad viryam kurushantaye viniyatam viryehi sarvadaya tad viryam kurushantaye viniyatam viryehi sarvadaya. Knees forwards and away, thinking, but not as people understand thinking. non-thinking, kind thinking, as a letting happen. Knees forwards and away, as a letting happen. Remembering what we want to happen. Knees forwards and away. Samādhi, prajñā, niṣprapañca. Alpecchu, samtuṣṭi, praviveka, viriya, smṛti. Samādhi, prajñā, niṣprapañca. Wanting little. Contentment, resting content. Separateness, seclusion, praviveka. Vīrya, effort, persevering. smṛti, thinking, remembering. Samādhi, composure, collecting the mind. Like the gold miner collecting, turning over again and again the gold. Prajñā, understanding, wisdom. Niṣprapañca, not othering. Not othering reality. Not othering anything. Knees forwards and away. Towards enjoying the sovereignty of golden sitting in samādhi. krameṇādbhiḥ śuddhaṁ kanakam pāṁsu-vyavahitaṁ yathāgnau karmāraḥ pacati brishamavartayaticha tata yoga charo mahā-purisa-vitakkā vishodhya kleshebhyaha shamayati mana samkshipaticha. Knees forwards and away. Embodied, transcendent wisdom of not clinging. Yathācha svachandat upanayati karma shraya sukham suvarnam karmāraḥ bahuvidamalam karavidishu manashudo bhikshur vashagatam abhijnas vapitata yatecham yatrecham shamayati mana prerayaticha. Knees forwards and away. Niṣprapañca. Towards the melting away of othering.